Jesus Christ is
all of us have chosen to live in God's presence, to live with God, surrendered to her suggestions, her joy. Then we're going to have to let go of an awful lot of baggage.
joy in the valleys, joy to the nations, Christ.
I'd like to start by reading Whispers from Eternity. Many doors opened before me at the dawn of thy coming. O Lord, the very earth shone with life when thou comest. The very ground on which I stood thrilled me because of thee. Everywhere dumb matter spoke to me, spirit resurrected by thy touch. All living things swayed in the incense breeze of thy approach, hinting at thy perfume of bliss. The sanctuary of omnipresence was long hidden by the darkness of my indifference. Now on the revealed courtyard of thy temple, I find thy fountain of joy gaily bubbling. With the uplifted palm cups of craving, I catch and drink the vital waters of thy solace, Lord. I know now that I shall thirst nevermore. I had a wonderful time preparing for this talk. It's called Living in the Presence, which is, at first read, a surprise, because the expectation is that it would say practicing the presence. But there's an interesting and subtle difference here. And I found living in the presence was just a wonderful topic to explore, and I hope I can get across some of the basic ideas and feelings of it. Where I started, well, I've been recovering, and so I've had a lot of time to read. So I started in on this a week or so ago. But where I started yesterday was, I thought, how can I put myself in the living presence? And I thought, well, that's simple. Just open the autobiography. And so I spent time, I just opened it. And you know how it is with the autobiography, it's such a rich scripture. Where I was my Idle in southern India. So it was the trip that Master made back to India for the one and only time since he had come to the West in 1920. And he was visiting old friends and making new friends. And of course, at the heart of it was his reconnection physically with his guru, and thrilling, absolutely thrilling stories in those 2 chapters. And so that sort of set the tone for my day. And it's something I recommend for all of us when we're feeling perhaps that we're out of touch, or we're feeling a little lost, or we're feeling a little whatever, things we can get into. Just open the autobiography. It just really doesn't matter where you land, because it'll be something that you just need to hear that day. That's just how magical it can be. The last time I spoke, I'm not quite sure when it was, but it was several weeks ago. I was talking about this lovely practice that Jyotish suggested that we do. It's a way to bring your meditation into I wouldn't say outward practice, but into extending your meditation in a way. So what he said was, take one of the qualities of God that is particularly relevant for you now, and remember how that feels. And so I would choose joy, and then recall a joyful experience. I think you're going to remember that we talked of this. And hold it there in your heart. And then allow it to just pervade your being and just be in that. I've had a wonderful time with that practice, and I thank Jyotish from the bottom of my heart for suggesting it. And each of us can do that with all of the qualities, with peace and with love, with energy. Take any of those qualities and just hold them in your being. And so it's a perfect match with meditation, because in meditation you're bringing the energy up. You're remembering where you will make that contact. And in this practice, you're just sort of bringing it deeply into your consciousness as you start your day. So God has given me a wonderful opportunity to practice joy. Pain and joy are a very interesting combination, but it works, I tell you, it works. It's an interesting combination. There it is. And I want to thank Kim, who was my driver today, because she visited me and she gave me a lot of pointers of how to respond to pain in a yogic way, because our body wants to go, no, it wants to resist, just, and what we need to do is go with it. And we know this, just release into it. So that's been a nice additional thing that I didn't expect from this recovery. So if we choose, as we have, I'm sure all of us have chosen, to live in God's presence, to live with God, to live surrendered to His advice, her suggestions, her joy, then we're going to have to let go of an awful lot of baggage. And we come in with a lot of baggage. We've gotten the notion that the measure of a person is their bad behavior. We do this, don't we? The measure of a person is their bad behavior, and in comes all those voices in our heads that scolds and suggests and sometimes maybe even relishes that someone has really messed up. It's terrible what we do, and we hang on to this. This is an environment. Can you imagine? This is an environment that our ego just loves to judge. But it gets you nowhere. I mean, there is nowhere to go with that. And I'm sure that we hear in our meditations other ways of being, but the ego just won't let go until it will. And it will if we live in the presence of God, because that's not a favorable place for critical thinking. There's another critical thinking thing that's intellectual or something. I hear it in colleges or something, but Becca knows about critical thinking. And I don't know what that is, so she'll have to educate me. Anyway, so we need to change our point of view. And it can happen. It can really happen. If you work at it, I've mentioned this experience many times in my own family. I had a perception of my son-in-law, my brother-in-law, and I held on to it for decades. And I just added to it and relished disliking the man for decades. And then I realized, you are in trouble. And I prayed for release from that point of view. I prayed almost down on my knees. I mean, I went down to the basics here. And I was graced with a forgiveness experience, which was extraordinary. And then, this is a story and then I needed to go and work with him, taking care of my twin sister with Alzheimer's. God had it all in mind. He knew what had to happen. Well, this is what has to happen for all of us. This is what has to happen. We need to be released from that judgmental attitude because we're all here with stuff. We're all here with stuff. We're not perfect. There's nobody perfect, and least of all, yourself. You're just not. You wouldn't be here unless you had something to work out that didn't interact with other people very well, that caused pain and frustration. And so living in the presence of God is the only option. It's really the only option. And figuring out ways, certainly your meditation practice, but this other way of just consciously and determinedly and focused bringing up the joy. And I just remind you, you can choose any of those qualities, but bringing up the joy. And it's sweet how life starts to cooperate with that suggestion, because I have a little bird feeder outside my window right by my bed. And I tell you, I have been communing with those sweet little creatures. Now, I've learned some things. Some varieties of birds are very efficient and seem to have a knack for sharing the feeder because they just come in, get their stuff, and fly away. And maybe, I think Louise told me, they hide it somewhere. These are the little chickadees. And others just, they go wild at the feeder. I'm going to get mine. And not only that, I'm going to get all 4 little places where I can feed. I'm going to get all 4 of them, so you stay away because I'm eating. Well, that's us. That's our ego. We're going to do it. We're just going to do it our way. And, you know, I look at these birds and I say, you know, if you could work this out now, your human existence would be so much better. But they don't listen to me. And I decided early on that I wouldn't get scientific about this. I love knowing the chickadee because he's so sweet. And he's just in himself, actually, it seems to me. But I decided, but now I'm getting curious that I wouldn't look it up and get the name. That's been a nice joy factor. So remember, well, some of you have read Conversations with Yogananda. And in there is a story about a man who was disgruntled with Mount Washington and self-realization. He was part of the group, but he was just going sour. And he got up in some kind of event off campus, in other words, and he just let them have it. Total surprise to the other devotees that were there, and they were horrified. He just ripped into SRF up and down. They were horrified, so they went home to Master and said, whoa, you should have heard this guy and what he did. Yeah. Master said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. He got on the phone, he called the man, he said, I want to thank you so much for the good work you're doing. You are doing so much good work for us. It's just lovely that you are willing to serve in this way. Surprise story, surprise, surprise. I often bring it up for the Kriya Prep group. What's going on here? What's going on here is where we're headed. Not judging others, remembering always that the difficult things, the dark things people do are not the measure of the man. And knowing that they have wonderful good qualities that need to be nourished. So Master understood, you have no right, it's not your business to scold other people about their habits. The ego thinks it is. It's got the wrong story. For a devotee, for any of us, it's not your business, it's not your right. And Master knew absolutely all the good that this man was capable of. And he knew that the only way to change some of that critical behavior was to encourage him in his higher qualities. And I'm sure it made a big impression on this fellow. Although I heard later that he kind of got himself sort of out of there and he dropped out. But see, that's the danger. If we keep being negative, we can just drive ourselves right out of what our hearts really want. And you know, it's the ego. It's not the full and deep part of ourselves. So for everyone, it doesn't how we are in our lazy times during the day when we let stuff out that isn't nice is not the measure of who we are. But we must get on with the business of clearing it up, because there's a lot of it, and we've lived a lot of lives and done ego-centered things. So we need to get about the business. But what a joy to drop out of some of those negative habits. It's such a joy, because what's happening? What's really happening? We're going back to who we really are. We're going in and relaxing into our soul self. And then our service to others is so natural. As the reading said, it's so natural to serve other people, to see what they need, to respond to what's going on with them without any thought of the trouble it may cause us. It brings a quality. It's like there's the phrase, God works through instruments. So it's a perfect attachment to this subject, because when we can free ourselves from being critical of others, then we free our heart to serve others. And then the quantity of love in the world is expanded. The quantity of light in the world is expanded. And we're active and doing what we were meant to do. There's nothing more joyful than that, really. So it's all of a piece, you know, and just because you feel maybe that you've got more suffering than others, let it go. We'll all get what we need to get, and we'll all do the work we need to do. It's going to work out fine. And as Swami always said, it will, when we achieve enlightenment, when we achieve freedom, we'll say, it was all worth it. So what I'm speaking of is the discipline of criticizing others. But it's worth it, because the flip side is the joy level that pervades. And you know, thinking of all of this made me think of times in my life when I misjudged. And these are lighter stories, of course, but it was so interesting to me. I went to library school 6 years after college. And it was a little trippy going back into the classroom, and I felt very insecure. And my, you know, hideaway place from childhood was to be very shy and not quite, you know how to be. And so there I was, going back into my old space. And there was a girl in there, and so this was an interesting classroom because there were people of all ages, whereas when you go to college, it's mostly all the same age. So there was a girl in there who's, I would call her the class clown. She seemed so relaxed. She was making jokes. She was making friends a mile a minute. And I was looking over her and said, wow, I wish I had some of that. Well, we were put together on a project, and we instantly liked each other. We just instantly said, yeah, well, we were pals. She even came to my wedding, the only person from library school. And she said, oh, I said, Dory, I just looked at you and said, why can't I have some of that? You know, why can't I just relax and enjoy myself? And she said, Well, I looked over at you and said, wow, why can't I be just so sophisticated? And so we just do this to people. We just do this with each other, and down deep, we're all connected. There's always the possibility of that kind of connection. And again, this is a very different experience, but in my trip to India in 2004, the preparation for that trip included the recognition that the leaders of the trip had to get across to us that it's going to be a shocking experience. We live so hygienically in this country, and that's not what you're going to see. So when I got off the first bus in India, there it all was in front of me, just the chaos and the people, and it's just the way things were, and it's a little disconcerting. And I said, Asha, you really have done this 9 times? You've come back to this country? And she said, I see what you see, I hear what you hear, I step in what you step in. But I have to tell you, every time my foot hits the soil of India, I feel so much joy. And I said, I'll take that on advisement. By the end of 30 or so days, it was all there. I would go back to, and I still feel it, I would go back to India in a minute. That is such a God-conscious town. That's such a God-conscious country, excuse me. And that's what we want to create in this time period that we're in. This is our opportunity to just bring that God consciousness into America, into the whole world. I mean, we're the warriors on the front lines, and just loving one another, helping one another, being level-headed, and being practical. This is the way to go. Thank you.
Gaudete, Christus es natus, ex Maria Virgine,